So not too long ago, a lot of rumors started flying around that supposedly Insomniac's Wolverine game will finally be showcased at the PlayStation State of Play event this month. This is good news for a lot of people since this game has been highly anticipated for a long time now, since it was first revealed in 2021, almost 4 years ago now. In general, a lot of people are excited for this game and do hope it shows up at the State of Play. But unfortunately, a certain notorious group of quote-unquote critics on YouTube and other platforms are really not happy about this new Wolverine game coming out. In particular, they're upset from what they've seen from the leaked game footage of this game, since they think that Jean Grey looks really ugly now. And they also think that Psylocke and Scarlet Witch's designs are clearly contributing to the uglification of women in gaming. Oh boy. I'm talking about none other than anti-woke video game critics who really don't like this new Wolverine game. Anti-woke game critics have unfortunately become a very vocal part of gaming discourse overall in the last few years, despite not really offering any real criticism of gaming in general. Rather than looking at the things you should look at when criticizing a video game, such as gameplay, storytelling, pacing, characterization, graphics, and things like that, they'd rather get mad at the meme maker system on Switch 2 and call it woke propaganda because the me's aren't labeled as boy and girl anymore. And yes, I wish I was making that up. Or they'll claim that Capcom's upcoming Onimusha game is clearly woke propaganda because there's British voice actors in it. Or that the upcoming Resident Evil game, Resident Evil Requiem, is clearly woke as well for having a female protagonist this time. Yeah, cause clearly Jill Valentine never existed. Anti-woke criticism of video games also tends to be very shallow and not really address the real issues when it comes to video games in general. For instance, when the game Concord came out and was a huge failure, a lot of anti-woke critics try to claim that quote-unquote wokeness was the reason that it failed, since they listed a lot of different diverse developers that worked on the game and also tried to claim the game was pushing quote-unquote woke activism, when in actuality the reason why Concord failed was simply because it wasn't a game anyone was interested in. It looked like a generic Overwatch clone with some Guardians of the Galaxy skinning over it, so nobody really cared since they had already seen plenty of games like that before. It wasn't quote-unquote wokeness that killed that game at all. But these are the same guys who tried to complain about the new Tron game from Disney being quote-unquote woke because it starred a black female protagonist as well, so I guess that also explains a lot. So today, I'm finally doing the long-awaited sequel to a video I did about 4 months ago about anti-woke game criticism and why it's not real criticism. There's been a lot of interesting developments in the months since I made that first video, especially in regards to how the anti-woke crowd tends to react to Sweet Baby Inc., so there'll be a lot to look at here for sure. So, without further ado, let's look at anti-woke game criticism, talk about why it's not real criticism, and talk about what real game criticism should look like overall. To start, let's go back to the topic I mentioned at the start of this video, that being Insomniac's Wolverine game. Recently, some leaks started going around that Marvel's Wolverine might finally get some news on it at PlayStation State of Play event this month, since it's been 4 years since we've had an update. However, the leaked possibility of this happening caused a lot of anti-woke YouTubers to immediately jump on the subject and call this game woke propaganda even though it hasn't come out yet. This is due largely to the fact that, much like Marvel's Spider-Man 2, Sweet Baby Inc. confirmed back in 2021 that they were going to be part of the team for this game. In particular, they would be doing sensitivity reading for this game, much like they did for Marvel's Spider-Man 2. However, to the anti-woke grifters, Sweet Baby Inc. is basically the devil itself, since they have a lot of misinformed ideas about this company that they've been pushing for a long time now. In particular, they think when Sweet Baby Inc. is involved in different video games, they go in and change the script and make it full of activism, when this really isn't the case at all, actually. Sweet Baby Inc. is really just a sensitivity reading group. They'll look over a script and give feedback on it, but they won't touch it or change anything about it. One anti-woke grifter who made a video on this in regards to the Wolverine game was none other than Dr. Disaster. Let's see what he had to say.
4 years ago, the Wolverine game from Insomniac was announced, and finally it looks like they are getting ready to release some more news about it at the next PlayStation State of Play.
Well, we're waiting.
But one thing that has been conspicuously missing from any news about this upcoming Wolverine game is the fact that Sweet Baby Inc. has definitely worked on this project. Sweet Baby has gone into hiding after the Gamergate 2 situation last year, trying to get rid of all the evidence of the work that they've done on things, but as friend of the channel Master of the TDS says here in this tweet, "Don't be fooled," and then he shows an image of an old tweet from Sweet Baby where they wrote "Thwip" and also "Snicked. So excited and grateful to say we're part of the teams bringing Spider-Man 2 and Wolverine to life with the amazing folks at Insomniac. It's been a truly marvelous experience."
Yeah, alright, I'll see you guys there.
And this would totally explain how a few years ago, when images from the Wolverine game were leaked, Jean Grey looked like this.
Okay, so right off the bat, Dr. Disaster shows us a version of Jean Grey that appeared in the leaked version of the Wolverine game that was shown during the big Insomniac breach about a year ago. During this big breach, about 2 hours of gameplay of the actual game was leaked, as well as many other assets. So this shot of Jean Grey with Wolverine in his patch outfit was also something that leaked around this time. However, if you look at the photo, it's very clear this is just as unfinished as everything else in the game that was leaked around this time as well. Heck, you can barely make out Jean Grey's face because very clearly the shading and lighting in this whole area hasn't even been finished yet. It's very clear there isn't any sort of uglification of Jean Grey going on here whatsoever. This is literally just an unfinished model. This is just straight up spreading misinformation on a non-issue here.
And now, I would just like to point out that these people completely crapped all over the Spider-Man franchise that Insomniac had put together. Spider-Man 2 very famously shoved LGBT flags into the game. They made Mary Jane homely and kinda plain looking, and then they forced you, the gamer, to play as Mary Jane during a segment of Spider-Man 2 which gamers absolutely despised. And it felt like the entire time in this game they were just crapping all over Peter Parker and turning him into the butt of the joke.
Not really, because Peter Parker is still the main character of that game. Aside from the one-off Mary Jane missions, the two main characters you play as in Marvel's Spider-Man 2 are Miles Morales and Peter Parker. And believe it or not, Peter Parker actually does have more missions than Miles. Miles has about 16 different story missions throughout the main campaign of the game, whereas Peter has 23. By definition, you do play the majority of the game as Peter Parker. He's not shoved off to the side or treated as the butt of the joke whatsoever here. He's still the main character of his own game, just as he was before.
Considering the high expectations for this game, this was pretty damned unforgivable. It is clearly Sweet Baby Inc. doing their thing to make the game more palatable to the modern audience.
No, considering the fact that Sweet Baby Inc. doesn't actually change anything with the characters and stories that they provide feedback on in these games, it doesn't sound like they're trying to push activism for the quote-unquote modern audience as you're saying here. This just seems like one big conspiracy theory, if anything.
Yay! Look at our video game. Don't you want to play?
We don't know that guy.
We thought we did.
When Insomniac came out with Spider-Man 2 a few years ago, a lot of people were put off by the fact that they shoved crap like rainbow flags all over in the game which could not be removed. It was a reminder of real-world shit plastered all over your escapism.
Oh right, because clearly Marvel and Spider-Man have never dealt with real-world things in their comics or other media before. Clearly Spider-Man wasn't out there saving people during the events of 9/11, and obviously he never met Obama either. No way, real-world stuff never happens in Marvel comics.
Make sure that you hit the like button on this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Also, I've begun uploading some content onto Rumble too, so follow me over there. And don't forget to follow me on X, where I keep a list of games lousy with wokeness pinned to the account at all times for your reference.
Okay, first of all, the fact that somebody would go out of their way to pin a list of quote-unquote woke games at the top of their Twitter feed kinda says a lot on its own. But things are made even funnier when you actually look at the list that Dr. Disaster has pinned to the top of his feed here. Stuff like Yooka-Laylee and Ratchet & Clank: A Rift Apart are apparently considered woke propaganda by him. Well yeah, clearly the activism is just oozing off of a bat and a lizard there. The jokes just write themselves with the kinds of games these guys consider quote-unquote woke propaganda.
My handle on that platform is Dr. Disaster 1. Anyhow, let's take a look at what these game journalists are saying about this Wolverine game that's supposedly about to be shown off at the next State of Play. And of course, keep in mind that, as we discussed the other day, this is another Sweet Baby Inc. game. their fingerprints are all over Wolverine, having come right out and said that they were working on the game in this post here on Twitter a few years ago before Gamergate 2 happened and they decided to go into hiding. This is a consultancy agency, Sweet Baby Inc., whose very purpose is to inject identity politics into whatever it is that they are consulting on. Keep in mind that Sweet Baby was very prominently featured in Spider-Man 2, having been brought in to do story consultation, so it is no surprise at all that a game that they were working on had Peter Parker getting shit on the entire time.
That's exactly it though. Sweet Baby doesn't actually put anything in the games they do sensitivity reading for. The quote-unquote woke stuff that you're complaining about here was already inserted in the game by Insomniac, and the thing is, it doesn't really take away from the game at all. Whether there are gay pride flags down the streets of New York or not in this game doesn't really matter, when really the things that matter with a game like Spider-Man 2 are how good is the story, how good is the gameplay, how well adjusted are the controls, and how many glitches are apparent in the game itself. Gay flags just simply existing in the game doesn't really take away from any of its overall quality. They're literally just something you might spot when swinging around in New York in the game. Now, something you could criticize Spider-Man 2 for at least a little bit is the amount of glitches that were apparent on the first day it came out. I recall streaming this game on Twitch around that time it launched, and there were a few noticeable bugs, such as when I swung by a building and instantly fell through the floor. That's absolutely the kind of stuff you can criticize Spider-Man 2 in really any game for, but just the fact that gay flags exist in the game isn't really anything to knock against it.
The Gamer wrote, "They think that the game looks fantastic. Playtesters are having a blast with Marvel's Wolverine. These guys are absolutely rolling with that headline, despite the fact that the information they're basing it on is pretty flimsy. It was one passing comment made by Tom Henderson in his podcast. So yeah, this guy said that in passing, saying that playtesters really seem to like this game, and suddenly, these game journalists are running around making crazy headlines saying,
"This is the most important thing to ever happen in the history of the world."
And never forget that these same game journalists said this sort of thing about Spider-Man 2, celebrating all of the LGBT stuff in it. Queerness is everywhere in Spider-Man 2. And then they said, Spider-Man 2 is fruity. Insomniac Games featured a smattering of pride flags throughout the first game's vision of Manhattan, but aside from that, kept things pretty straight. The sequel, meanwhile, is filled with distinct LGBTQ+ representation everywhere you look, from walls of street art to smaller side quests Peter and Miles can take on to help the local communities. Peter and Harry might be straight besties, you'll never stop me from shipping them. So that is what the outlet The Gamer said about Spider-Man 2, and now here they are a few years later talking about Wolverine, and they expect me to respect them and give them some sort of credibility? Absolutely not.
But even outside of The Gamer, which admittedly I don't look to for gaming news myself, Push Square, WCCF Tech, Insider Gaming, Gaming Bible, and a lot more people are actually excited for this game and saying it looks good. And I do find it funny that he keeps bringing up the gay aspect and trying to say that Marvel's Wolverine will be insanely gay. Well, I hate to break it to you, Dr. Disaster, but X-Men has quite literally always been about social injustice from the very beginning. Stan Lee initially created the X-Men to mirror the civil rights movement that was going on in the 1960s at the time he created those characters. They've always been about this, and as such, they've always been able to be interpreted a number of different ways, whether it's an allegory for racism, something that LGBTQ people can look to, or something that people with disabilities can see themselves in as well. Heck, Iceman, one of the most prominent members of the X-Men, is canonically gay. If there are pride flags in this game as well, like what Dr. Disaster is complaining about here, it would actually be very in line with the X-Men universe. And also like Spider-Man, it wouldn't really take away from the gameplay. That's not the thing to focus on here. What we should be looking at when Marvel's Wolverine finally comes out to criticize are things like gameplay, storytelling, characterization, and the things that really matter when criticizing a video game. Just fixating on things like flags existing in a game or the way a woman character looks doesn't really make any sense and isn't real criticism. This kind of anti-woke criticism of video games also bleeds over to another creator, Alteori. I've discussed Alteori a little bit before in the past on this channel, especially in regards to her reaction reaction to the Witcher 4 trailer. Alteori is definitely one of the more notorious anti-woke grifters out there, since most of her content is just her getting mad at any sort of female protagonist in any media. One video of hers that is especially interesting to note though is called "Do Politics Belong in Gaming?" In this video, she talks about how she thinks woke politics are being pushed by activists in the gaming space. Oh boy. Let's see what she had to say.
Do politics belong in gaming? Do you want to hear about activism in gaming? Would you like to hear about politics in gaming? Well, sucks to be you, because politics are in everything. So many games you've played have political elements woven into them. A lot of people, myself included, have expressed a sentiment that they don't want to see politics in their games. Understandably, many others have responded with politics are everywhere, and all art is political. So I decided to take a deeper look into politics in gaming, either the subject matter and why people are so anti-politics in gaming now, especially when they weren't before, and what exactly makes the right way to incorporate politics versus the wrong way. So the first thing I want to say is politics have always had a place in video games and entertainment. It's nothing new, but there is a key difference between incorporating broader political themes and then shoehorning in the modern day politics that we see everywhere now.
Okay, so right off the bat, Alteori talks about the supposed difference between incorporating broader political themes into a game and supposedly shoehorning in real-world politics. While she does this, she shows footage of Metal Gear Solid and brings up Metal Gear Solid as an example of a game that doesn't incorporate real-life politics. So Metal Gear Solid, the series that has tons of anti-capitalist and anti-war messaging in it, as well as having an entire game set during the Cold War and having Naked Snake infiltrate a Soviet-occupied jungle, as well as having plenty of commentary all throughout about nuclear warfare, AI, control of information, and the war economy overall, clearly isn't tackling real-world politics at all. Yeah, sure, whatever you say, buddy.
It's not that politics themselves are bad, because a lot of the time they often add depth and they create these really good stories or narratives, and of course they spark conversation. Games like BioShock, Fallout, or even Metal Gear Solid are great examples of this.
Even the other two games she brings up here, BioShock and Fallout, absolutely tackle real-world politics as well. BioShock Infinite in particular tackles a lot of racism in regards to white supremacy and also a lot of religious extremism as well. Fallout is quite literally all about the fallout of nuclear warfare. All three of these games tackle real-world politics, so it doesn't really make any sense for Alteori to try to claim they don't.
They use political themes to build rich worlds and explore complex ideas without dragging the players out of the experience of the game. But when people bring up the issue about politics, they're usually referring to present-day politics, which are often divisive, raw, and emotionally charged. And why is this? Because it's too close to home, and anything too close to home ruins the immersion into escapism. If you just lost a loved one, or you just had a very bad breakup, and you lost the love of your life, would you want to watch romance movies or hear songs about people falling in love or see people kissing and hugging? While some people might want to do that, I think I speak for a lot of us that want to be as far away from that as possible. The last thing we want to think about is what we lost or don't have, because the pain is still very raw.
It's fucking raw!
So then what do we do? Well, if you're like me, and I think a lot of people are, you bury yourself into your work, your art, you work out even harder, and try to keep yourself busy, anything to escape the feelings or reasons for why you're experiencing those feelings. People also turn to gaming and entertainment as a form of escapism, a way to step away from the stress and noise of real life, even if they haven't lost anyone. When modern politics are inserted too blatantly into those little mediums, it can break that immersion, and it makes it feel like the game or whatever entertainment that they're watching or consuming is preaching to them or taking sides, which alienates part of the audience. It stops being about the story or the world, and it starts feeling like an argument that you didn't ask to be a part of, something that you're trying to escape from or get away from, only to see it in your face again.
Oh really? Well, if that's true, then why don't you tell me why Helldivers 2 has sold almost 15 million copies now since it released last year? Or why Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater Delta, the remake of Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, has sold 1 million copies at launch? The fact is, politics being in these games really has nothing to do with people's enjoyment of them, because all art is political. What really matters is whether the game is actually a quality product or not, which Helldivers 2 and Metal Gear Solid Delta both are. Politics being in these games clearly isn't holding them back at all from being huge successes.
People hear these issues preach them constantly no matter where they go, so when they turn to entertainment as an escape, they don't want those same present-day problems thrown in their face in a game they're paying for.
So then again, why are they playing things like Fallout, BioShock, Metal Gear Solid, or Helldivers 2? These games all do tap into real-world politics and are all super successful. Trying to claim that these kinds of games aren't ones that gamers gravitate to just doesn't really make any sense.
even if a game presents issues that like parallel the current real world problems, as long as it doesn't actively and obviously reference modern day events, it's easier for players to feel removed from it. They can immerse themselves in someone else's lives or struggles of their character rather than being bombarded and reminded of their own in the real world.
But again, a franchise like Metal Gear Solid or Fallout or BioShock does incorporate real world stuff and people like it. I know I keep bringing this up, but I don't know why Alteori keeps trying to make this point here when it very clearly isn't true. But interestingly enough, Alteori isn't the only anti-woke pick-me girl that has provided bad faith criticism on video games. Another person that has done this is none other than Melonie Mac. Melonie Mac is a pretty notorious anti-woke pick-me girl that I actually haven't covered yet on the channel here. However, she is the same person that was cheering on HeelVsBabyFace's infamous Starfield rant, so I think you can already probably see where this is gonna go.
F off! You're boring!
Can't nobody rant like Az, just absolute legend of rants, the king of rants. And he says what a lot of us are thinking, and just in his amazing way.
Yeah, that rant was really based, wasn't it, Melonie? Wow. Nothing cooler than a 50-year-old man throwing a temper tantrum about pronouns in a video game. Definitely something to aspire to. Not too long ago, Melonie actually made a video about Lara Croft's design in the Dead by Daylight game. Let's see what she had to say.
So Dead by Daylight dropped more Lara Croft skins in the game. I don't know what's going on because I thought that Lara Croft wasn't staying in the game. Maybe she is, that was a rumor. But she looks worse than ever in these new images. And I have to show you guys, I don't know what is going on. Clearly this is also partially Crystal Dynamics' fault because I mean, they give them the assets, they tell them what they want it to look like. So this is entirely Crystal Dynamics' fault. I said Lara Croft isn't allowed to be beautiful anymore. Look what they did to her, which as you can see, this is in the classic remasters. This is Lara Croft looking as she should. Beautiful, womanly, feminine. There's that. And then you have this. What did they even do? And what is up with those proportions? I thought that perhaps Crystal Dynamics learned how proportions worked because for some reason they don't know basic proportions and that people typically aren't built like this. This is an abnormality.
Okay, let's be real here. Are people generally built like old Lara Croft either though? Her classic design is absolutely iconic, but like, are most women really gonna look like that? She does have a number of features that could be considered exaggerated, not that that's a bad thing, but like, it's still not a very realistic character design still. So it's interesting she gets mad at the Dead by Daylight design for not looking quote-unquote realistic when really the original design doesn't necessarily either. I think you could argue the only time that Lara has looked specifically realistic were in the reboot duology of Tomb Raider games.
There's more, but wait guys. So here you have this. What even is that? What even? That's not Lara Croft. I don't get it. It's some people are, there's actually a couple of there's one comment that's like, oh, this looks like Survivor Lara's face too. I love it. It doesn't. Even the reboot Lara's face looked better than that. What is this? This looks like fan art. This does not look like Lara Croft at all. And why is her mouth open but she has no teeth? What is going on?
Okay, first of all, just because her teeth aren't visible in this painting doesn't mean they aren't there at all. Secondly, I find it interesting that Melonie seems to think that both Lara's design here and also in the reboot games was totally uglified. When, interestingly enough, if you look at some of her earlier videos, which mysteriously have been unlisted, you find the opposite mentality.
I'm gonna start off just talking about the character model because that was a big thing for me. Literally like the exact same character model. So the character model, big win for me. Lara Croft, take a beautiful character and make her uglier. Make her look more and more plain. But I can speak for an improved Lara, both like physically. In the cutscene, Lara looks great. I really like Lara's character model overall. And in the cutscene, she looked great. You gotta love her, man. You gotta love her. Dude, I love her. Yeah, dude, I love her. She just makes this. She makes the game. I can just honestly say they freaking did it right.
So, Melonie went from glazing Lara's design in all the Tomb Raider reboot games to just 5 years later saying it's ugly out of nowhere. Gee, I wonder what could have spiked up between 2018 and 2025 to make Melonie start saying this and magically change her opinion. There's no way she was grifting and trying to profit off the culture war, right? Right?
Sorry, did you want to get immersed in our world? Yeah, well, guess what? Fucking pronouns!
Despite quite literally having the opposite opinion and that being on record not even that long ago, Melonie has suddenly shifted things just because it's profitable now. Wow, this woman is a sellout. She's decided to join all the other grifters that have tried to comment about the uglification of women in video games just because it's profitable now. Yeah, real slick change there, Mel.
Now, if they made a version of her that is objectively more beautiful than this, that's still not the goal. The goal is that she needs to look like herself. And she looks beautiful. She has very characteristic features. She's got full lips, so she should have her full lips. She's got, she just has her curvy, athletic build, so she should look like that. And if they want to make her more realistic looking and less stylized art, you can do that. We have a blueprint. Look at Angelina Jolie, who has a bunch of her features.
So this is an argument I already debunked in my previous Spider-Man video, but no, Angelina Jolie actually had to wear bra padding in the Tomb Raider movie. She made it very clear to the crew when joining the cast for that film that she didn't have the same bust size as Lara Croft. So as a result, they had to find a workaround and ended up giving her bra padding during the filming of that movie.
And that's the problem. She needs to look like herself. Why is that too much to ask? But for some reason, Crystal Dynamics is just super opposed to that. So here we have her in the game here, which I guess it's a little bit better lighting, but still, it's just not, like, if you were to see this, would you know that was Lara Croft? I mean, not unless you've played Rise of the Tomb Raider and you know all of the outfits and you're a fan of specifically Rise of the Tomb Raider. But if you would be thinking of Lara Croft as in classic Lara Croft, there's no way you would make that connection with this. It doesn't look like her. It just looks like generic combat gear girl, right? And then here you have this. Again, what is up with those proportions?
Well, looks like her classic outfit to me, Melonie. I think anyone could recognize that, even if she doesn't have the same proportions. But clearly she's too ugly, just like you were saying when you magically swapped your opinion about the reboot trilogy.
And I feel like this is the best characterization we've had of Lara ever. I can say that confidently. This version of Lara is the most well-rounded personality that we've ever seen in any Tomb Raider game in the history of time.
This is generally the base definition of someone who is a grifter, someone who will say something they don't even believe, which in this case Melonie very obviously is, just for profit. So now we've looked at a few different anti-woke critics videos that talk about specific issues that they think are plaguing the video game industry that aren't really real issues at all. Now let's take a look at a video that takes a more general perspective on why they think quote-unquote wokeness is killing the gaming industry. Not too long ago, a channel named November Hotel made a video called Yes, Woke Video Games Are Bad Games. This video is more general and all-encompassing with a lot of the points these anti-woke grifters tend to make, so let's see what he had to say.
Over the last few years, it feels like the gaming industry has been declining rapidly, and the threats are coming from all angles. On this channel, we've talked about many of the reasons for this decline, from overinflated budgets to awful monetization, bland and repetitive gameplay designs, a focus on graphics over gameplay, and the myriad of glitches and buggy releases. All of these are legitimate reasons why quality has declined in modern games, but not talked about nearly enough on my channel is one of the biggest and most critical reasons as to why modern games are failing. In fact, as sad as it is, many gamers have become more tolerant and accepting of these problems over here, and they aren't as vocal about bad monetization or buggy releases these days. They've become too tolerant of these issues, in my opinion, to the point where it doesn't really impact sales like it used to. Instead, the biggest deterrent for modern gamers is game studios and publishers' disgusting focus on creating games for the non-existent modern audience. Or, in other words, the obsession with creating woke video games. How many examples in 2024 alone do we have of that being the reality? Conquered, Flintlock, Suicide Squad, Dustborn, Star Wars Outlaw, and the ones yet to release are already looking like they're going to be flops, like Assassin's Creed Shadows, Dragon Age Veilguard, and the Indiana Jones game.
So, interestingly enough, the 3 games that he mentioned at the end there actually weren't flops whatsoever. While Assassin's Creed Shadows does have a number of legitimate issues with it, given it is Ubisoft that developed the game, it did sell well. And actually, when it came out towards the start of this year, it was the second best-selling game of 2025, right under Monster Hunter Wilds. As for Dragon Age Veilguard, that also became a very popular game when it came out and actually surpassed Call of Duty Black Ops 6 on Steam in terms of sales. And as for Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, that ended up being a huge hit for both Bethesda and Lucasfilm Games. It was very critically acclaimed and very commercially successful, with a lot of people saying it felt like what the last Indiana Jones movie really should have been.
Now, I think it's important to note that a lot of these games are usually objectively bad or average games with or without the wokeness in them, but a company that prioritizes DEI and ESG scorecards will almost always create a mediocre product.
The thing is though, including quote-unquote wokeness isn't the thing that's gonna kill a game. Great example being this year with Split Fiction. Split Fiction, which contains a lot of elements that these guys would probably consider quote-unquote woke, became a huge hit and sold over 4 million copies at launch. A game like Concord, which contains a lot of elements that these guys often consider quote-unquote woke, failed just because it was a generic Overwatch clone that nobody cared about. People didn't play Concord, but a lot of people did play Split Fiction despite there actually being a lot of common elements between the two games. So really, the quote-unquote woke elements aren't the thing to be criticizing here, it's how well made the game actually is and whether it's something that people will actually want to play or not. Which, in the case of Split Fiction, it very much was. That's really what it comes down to.
One of the biggest problems with woke media is how sanitized everything has become. Just listen to the dialogue in modern gaming, especially in the latest Star Wars Outlaws, and you'll understand what I mean. Everything has become so inoffensive. Every NPC has to be so overly cheery and fake. It feels like Uncanny Valley at every turn because, God forbid, a character actually offends someone.
Now, this point I find interesting since I actually have talked about something similar in my Lilo & Stitch video, as you may recall. In that video, I criticized Disney for sanitizing Lilo & Stitch and watering it down a ton in the live-action remake and taking away a lot of the rougher edges that the original had. Instead of Lilo and Nani being parentless and having to fend for themselves and often coming into conflict because of this, they now have a nice neighbor lady who acts like their mom so they don't have to feel bad anymore. Wow, great job, Disney. So to some degree, I do agree that watering down legacy media can be a problem, but not really in the way that this guy is saying. For instance, a lot of these guys call the new God of War games quote-unquote woke because Kratos is more fleshed out in these games. Rather than just going around killing things mindlessly, he's more methodical and more thoughtful and more reluctant ultimately to do so. He's learned a lot since the original God of War games that took place in Greek mythology that has caused him to really reflect on his life and think about what he's doing. That's not quote-unquote wokeness, that's developing a character and making him more interesting. By that logic, you may as well call Wolverine in the movie Logan quote-unquote woke for the exact same reasons. Probably the two most notable games that are coming out relatively soon that are currently getting a lot of flack for being quote-unquote woke are Ghost of Yotei and also Silent Hill F. In my previous video discussing anti-woke game criticism, I did go over a lot of the discourse around Ghost of Yotei, but I didn't cover Silent Hill F. So given that game does come out later this month, let's take a look at a video that Dr. Disaster did calling Silent Hill F feminist garbage. Oh boy.
What is up, Space Pirates? This is your Admiral, the notoriously nefarious Dr. Disaster. And one of the reasons that Sydney Sweeney has gotten so much backlash over the past month or so from the feminist types with all of the ads that she's been putting out is that she makes them look so bad. She just starred in this ad from Jimmy Choo, and the feminist sewer creatures are losing their shit over it. The problem is that feminism today is no longer about the freedom to simply choose hobbies or jobs. It has become a personality type, highlighted by hating men and projecting constant victimhood.
God damn it, I'm not fat, I'm just shamed for my body in a world where white men decide what's beautiful.
And this brings me to Silent Hill F, a game which has been on my radar for a while now because it looked like they might be catering to feminist victimhood politics. The first hint of this came months ago when we learned about this trigger warning here from the game where they warn us about gender discrimination being depicted in their 1960s Japan setting.
Well, they show a lot of things on this trigger warning, not just gender discrimination. They also talk about child abuse, bullying, drug-induced hallucinations, torture, and graphic violence as well. Silent Hill is, at its core, a very psychologically focused horror series. Much like a game like Eternal Darkness, which actually took a lot of influence from Silent Hill, although it applied it in a different way. Given Silent Hill as a series does directly target the player's mind, it does kinda make sense to put this stuff as a trigger warning before someone actually plays the game. There's not any kind of feminist propaganda going on here, just a warning for people's mental health. That's why at the bottom it says, if you feel uncomfortable at any point while playing, please take a break from playing or speak to someone you trust. Yeah, clearly a mental health trigger warning is major feminist propaganda. Get real, the jokes just write themselves here. Also, speaking of mental health in video games, if you're at Portland Retro Gaming Expo next month, I'll be actually giving a panel there on mental health representation in video games. Last year, I presented a panel on autism representation in video games, so this year it's gonna be mental health. So if you're at that convention, feel free to say hi and check out my panel. Portland Retro Gaming Expo runs from October 17th to 19th, so if you're interested, check out their website. But for now, let's get back to whatever Dr. Disaster was saying here.
This article here came out from Polygon, and the creators of the game were asked what the F in the game's title stood for, and they made it clear that it had an open-ended meaning. Polygon had a few theories about what the F means, for example, talking about how it could stand for 5, since this might be viewed as Silent Hill 5, but they also talked about how F could stand for female in the game, talking about how Hinako, the main character, is a bit of a tomboy, and Polygon guessed that maybe the F could have something to do with the character's gender identity. Oh goody, am I right? The article starts off explaining that the game takes place in 1960s Japan, and then from there it says, there's a very good reason for Konami's decision to pin Silent Hill F to this bygone era, which we're learning more about thanks to an interview from Gamescom 2025. And then, down below it says, Silent Hill F stars Hinako Shimizu, who the game's producer describes as a repressed young woman, before detailing how this forms the game's narrative basis. And let me say that again to emphasize how effed, pun intended, this game's story sounds. A repressed young woman forms the game's narrative basis.
Okay, so let me get this straight. Just because the game is set in the 1960s and stars a Japanese woman, it's automatically effed in your opinion and is gonna be woke propaganda and dead on arrival. What, just because the game is called Silent Hill F and you think that stands for feminist? Even for someone like Dr. Disaster, this seems like an incredibly extreme reach. How did he even come to this conclusion?
And then the article says, the focus that we place on the story and for Hinako is how she musters the courage to combat the repression. So, basically it sounds like The Handmaid's Tale, but set 50 or 60 years ago in Japan, with a bunch of Silent Hill monsters lurking around. Now, I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound appealing to me at all.
Okay, so I'm not 100% on this admittedly, but given the history of Silent Hill as a series, I'm pretty sure this isn't their kind of repression that they're talking about. The two other major protagonists in the Silent Hill series, that being Harry Mason and James Sunderland, actually are technically mentally repressed. In both games, they feel like they have to push down their more deeper, more emotional feelings in order to be seen as strong by the people around them. Harry has to try and push down his anxiety to look strong in front of his wife. James has to push down his depression and a lot of his overwhelming feelings and anxiety as well to not look quote-unquote weak by the people around him. In a lot of ways, this kind of repression is probably the thing that Silent Hill F is also gonna dive into. It's kind of insane just to jump to conclusions here and automatically think this is gonna be feminist propaganda. The game hasn't even come out yet.
But let's read some more where they take my fears that this game will be doused with feminist victimhood narrative and they crank it up to an 11. The article says, Hinako is quickly demonstrated to stand against the grain regarding traditional Japanese views on the woman's role in society, which were, of course, significantly more prevalent in the 60s, which isn't to say they've gone away, but I can only imagine what it must have been like for any woman from that time frame who lacked interest in swiftly secured marriages and childbearing.
Okay, so they literally just said it right there. This Silent Hill game is gonna be about combating trauma and mental health demons just like every other Silent Hill game. It just so happens this one has a historically accurate setting as well to go with it. Because yeah, at the end of the day, in the 1960s in Japan, and really in a lot of other countries overall, there weren't really a lot of women voices heard. This doesn't seem like forced feminist propaganda to me, it just seems like a historically accurate period piece. It really doesn't make much sense at all why Dr. Disaster seems to have such an extreme problem with this game. Overall, anti-woke game criticism tends more often than not just to not highlight the real problems with games overall. Rather than talking about the real reasons games like Concord or Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, or games like that actually failed, they'd rather just point at them and call them woke. There's not really any real sort of criticism going on there when you do that. If you really want to criticize a video game, you have to look at things like gameplay, storytelling, pacing, characterization, and the things that really make up a video game to begin with. And in a lot of ways, I think you could argue that anti-woke game discourse tends to be a lot more toxic than anti-woke film discourse even. Unfortunately, it does seem like that is often the nature of it, since these guys would rather make racist or sexist comments than actually criticizing a game and saying how it could do better. But since we just looked at a lot of anti-woke game critics that you probably shouldn't watch, I'm going to recommend some game critics that you should actually check out that offer a proper analysis of gaming overall. Channels like The Golden Bolt, The Gamer's Joint, The Gaming Truge, Noah Caldwell Gervais, I Finished a Video Game, Jay's Reviews, Miss Fushi Gaming, and Chinchilladas, who by the way are also both IRL friends of the channel, Arlo, and last but not least, Nerol. All these people are far more competent game critics that you should definitely check out that do actually properly analyze a game, and I'll be linking them down in the description as well. But regardless, thank you to everybody that's been supporting this Hunting Griffly Bears series overall. I hope at the very least it's made people more thoughtful about the kind of criticism they consume and also help them create better criticisms of video games and other media overall. I really hope I can continue to make a difference here for that on the channel. So thank you to everybody that's been supporting me during this series, it means more than you might know. But what do you think? Am I horribly wrong? Is Silent Hill F gonna be wildly woke? And are you excited for any of the games that I mentioned in this video? Let me know in the comments below. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed this video or learned something new from it. If you like this video, be sure to give it a like and also consider subscribing as well. I cover a lot of topics like this in general on the channel, analyzing film, animation, and gaming overall, so if you like this video, you'll probably like the other videos I have planned as well. If there's something you think I should cover here on the channel in the future, comment down below and let me know. You can check out my Discord link down below to hang out with fellow film, animation, and gaming fans as well. And if you'd like to see various one-off reviews I've written for various films, you can check out my letterbox, which is linked down below as well. All my social media is linked down below as well. Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, you can follow me on all the things. If you'd like to follow me on Patreon or become a YouTube member, that's also linked down below as well. Special thanks to my patrons and YouTube members, DDC1996, Trayvon Gibson, MMBY123, Sparky Fluffles, Jared the Rabbit, You the Guardian, Balf Games, Eliza Feller, Geothermal Penguin, and Sasha Blasik for supporting me over there as well. I appreciate y'all pitching in with the extra monetary effort to keep me doing what I do here, it definitely means a lot. And thank you for coming to the very end of this video, hope you enjoyed it or learned something new from it. But regardless, I've been Otterly Noah, and I'll see you on the Otter side. Bye!
Yeah, well, guess what? Fucking pronouns! I love nothing more than to be dragged down at every fucking conceivable opportunity so you can fucking current day us! Current fucking day! Fuck off!
You are a sad, strange little man, and you have my pity. Farewell.